All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Senator Smith here to present Senate Bill 390. We've actually heard this bill, but it was not sponsored in the Senate, so we're going to have a full panel. This came over from the House, but we just didn't have an opportunity to move on from it last session, and because it got over here pretty late. We've heard a lot about how we've needed our law enforcement officers to do more and more and more. That was kind of the theme of the last bill. But we also know that we have less and less and less. I asked our friends at MACO and MML, how many law enforcement agencies are there? So there are 150 law enforcement departments throughout the state of Maryland and about 18,000 law enforcement officers today. But if you look through our largest jurisdictions, like so for Montgomery County, we have 166 vacancies, which is a 13% vacancy rate. In Baltimore City, we have a 24% vacancy rate, which is 619 officers short in Baltimore City. Baltimore County has 235 vacancies. That's a 12% vacancy rate. Anne Arundel County, a 5% vacancy rate. Prince George's, 19% vacancy rate, and I could go on. That's a theme all throughout, and I know the mayor of Frederick is here as well. He can attest to this for his own jurisdiction. And so we're asking law enforcement to do more, but we have less. And so what this bill does is it, currently, right now, for those traffic lights, to review cameras and to approve those citations, only sworn officers can do that right now. And so what this bill does is it says that a technician, a qualified technician, can also assist in that endeavor, therefore leaving the officers that are currently assigned to this duty to go out and do other important law enforcement duties, things that we all know and need them to do throughout the course of their work. It also incorporates a new training requirement. Today, again, the only requirement to issue these citations is that you have to be a sworn officer. On page 2 of the bill, if you go through lines 31 through 34, now you'll have to have a little bit more training, or training at all, some training. So now you have a force multiplier that allows our law enforcement officers to go out and do that law enforcement work, plus you'll have a raised standard for training. This is also important because I want to give Abigail, or Abby Bento, some credit on this because she did some work on this bill in preparing me for this hearing. And she looked at the MPTSC's annual report, and she found that over 25,000 erroneous citations were reported in 2024, which we have increased our fines from about 40 to 80, so they've gone up a little bit. And she said that if the minimum fine was $80 and over 24,000 citations were erroneous, that would be a minimum of $1.9 million, so $2 million of wrongfully existing citations that were issued. So the point is this: we have a dearth of law enforcement officers out there in the field. The current system is issuing a lot of false positives, and there's no training requirement. So what this bill does is, I think, provide for a more efficient use of our law enforcement assets and resources. It provides for more training. With that, I would ask for a favorable report. I'll stand by to take questions at the end of our panel. And I believe that's it. I think it's pretty much, that's the sum and substance of the bill. All right. Mr. Mayor.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Michael O'Connor. I am the president of the Maryland Municipal League this year and the mayor of the city of Frederick. We appreciate your consideration of Senate Bill 390 and appreciate the senator's sponsorship of this legislation. Current law allows for non-sworn personnel to review red light camera citations. And so really what we're asking for is some consistency in the area of automated enforcement to allow, as the senator has said, the best deployment of those uniform resources where we need them. Our agency is an agency of 157 authorized. We are down 10 officers right now, so not quite the vacancy rate that some of those other departments are experiencing, but the concerns that we hear from our residents, which you've heard from some of the other prior testimony and bills, is that the demands on our law enforcement community only increases. Speeding is the #1 concern and complaint I hear from residents in every neighborhood in my community. And even with a authorized force of 157 to cover 22 square miles in the city of Frederick, I could not place a police officer in every place where there are concerns about speeding. This is why the automated enforcement is so valuable, because it is that force multiplier. We have a part-time technician that reviews our automated enforcement on the red light camera side. We'd like to be able to turn that into a full-time position to look at all of the automated enforcement, because we think it's the most efficient use of the highly trained police resources that we have. Yes, training is important, but the kind of training necessary to review these citations is not the kind of training that we put police officers through in the academy. And we believe that there is a better use of the dollars than paying police officers to review the citations that we get. We are presently in an arrangement with the town of Newmarket, a community that does not have a police agency. And they would like to be able to deploy this resource, but cannot, because they don't have uniformed personnel to review those, so they contract with the city of Frederick to do that on their behalf. We want this tool to be available for every municipal government across the state of Maryland. Thank you very much for your time.
Good afternoon. Bill Jorsch with the Maryland Municipal League here today in support of Senate Bill 390. A lot of my points have been touched on by the chair and the bill sponsor and the mayor of Frederick so far. So I will touch a little bit on why MML and our 157 municipalities are interested in this bill. 88 of the 157 have a police department, and as mentioned, allowing a technician to review speed camera images and issue the citations would provide personnel flexibility that's much needed with the shortages that have been discussed. Secondly, and the mayor touched on this at the end of his presentation, is that the other 69 municipalities do not have a police agency. Currently, we know of only 3 of those municipalities that are operating speed cameras, and they do so in a contract with either their county sheriff's office or a neighboring municipality with a police department. And anecdotally, we're hearing that this is providing a bit of a barrier to entry for some of these smaller municipalities. Now, I think the fiscal note touches on this in that the bill really provides operational flexibility, but this is not going to lead to a large proliferation of speed cameras popping up. Those that currently don't operate programs are the smaller ones that may, if they so choose to do this now by able to employ a technician. These are not large jurisdictions, and the number of cameras that would be deployed in their jurisdictions is likely very low. That being said, they're essentially kind of boxed out at the moment from even making that choice, because finding a benevolent police agency nearby to take on additional work is proving very difficult. In your packets, you should see supporting letters from the Prince George's County Municipal Association, representing all 27 municipalities in Prince George's County, almost all of which have a police agency, as well as small towns like Glen Echo and Montgomery County that does not have a police agency, but may be able to utilize the technology to keep their residents safe should they have the provision to use a technician. Urge a favorable report. Thank you for your time. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you to the chair and members of the committee for having me today. My name is Sarah Sample. I'm here from the Maryland Association of Counties, and we are here in support of Senate Bill 390. This is authorizing legislation that we can use as we see fit, so it's not mandating. We do think that it will help us get and keep police officers in our communities where their expertise is needed to make sure that our community members and residents are safe. We think that's a good thing because we do have a shortage right now of officers. And we also like that the bill specifies that this is a trained individual, and we think that'll make sure that they understand the technology, but also the adjudication process for citations like this. So we think this is a good governance bill. It gives us flexibility to use this if we see fit, and we would certainly support Senate Bill 390 and urge a favorable report. Thank you.
Good morning again. Russ Hamill. I'm here today now representing MML as well as Maryland Chiefs and Sheriffs in support of Senate Bill 390. The chair already brought up most of our points, but I do want to touch on a couple. We're requesting a favorable report because we believe this bill would permit law enforcement agencies with these programs to have the civilian technicians review the recorded images of alleged violations produced by the cameras and swear or affirm to the recorded violations' accuracy rather than require a sworn law enforcement officer to do so, as is currently required in my jurisdiction. I use a sergeant for this at this time. The legislation would free our sworn personnel from these duties, allowing them to be assigned to tasks required of sworn officers rather than these administrative duties. This is especially critical right now with us struggling with recruiting and retention still to this day. It simply serves as a force multiplier and to make sure that we're enhancing our community safety by having our officers out doing what they're trained to do and what they're responsible for doing, and having us the ability to use a civilian technician to do this. Our non-sworn staff currently does the red light automated enforcement citation program. They've been able to do that since 1997. We believe that's handled professionally as well. I don't think we lose any professionalism moving this over to that committed staff. I think this simply is a good public policy to allow us to do this. I don't anticipate it causing any great training issues. Currently, our vendor trains our people. Our sergeant was trained by our vendor in doing it. And my sergeant assured me that it would be easy to have somebody else trained to do it that's not sworn. So we respectfully request a favorable report on the bill, and thank you for your time again.
Thank you. And I do recall this bill from last year. I think it was relatively supportive of it, but I just want to understand something. So given the chairman's reference to, was it 24,000 erroneous tickets or 2,400? Oh, big number. That just made me think about the fact that, and that's with law enforcement, right? The only group that can deal with these citations. So I guess I'm saying, what skills are needed and to do this, and how will we ensure that, you know, adequate training is provided? And I guess these erroneous citations might be something to do with keeping the equipment, I could be wrong, but the equipment correctly calibrated to not issue erroneous tickets? So I just don't want to exacerbate the problem, and just hear about some assurances of how taking it, you know, expanding it in light of the erroneous ticket problem already. How do we just ensure that we won't make the problem worse?
We have a resident expert talking about Montgomery County, but at least this codifies the standard of some training, which is
right, but
not there now. But you can give us more elements of what the exact.
do you happen to know why there's that many? Is it the calibration of the machines that is generally
I
causing?
don't know the answer to that question,
You
but I can give you a copy of the report.
Yeah,
You can
just- I'm all for, I think I supported it last year, I'm supporting it now.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to make sure we have the right, you know, make sure we ensure good training, and especially if it has anything to do with keeping that equipment, you know, sharp, if you will. and
What I'm
accurate.
advised by some subject matter experts is that this is probably more to operator error. Certain things like a Virginia vanity tag, which a lot of vanity tags there
Right.
being misread.
By the person, by a human or
By
a
the human
machine?
looking at it. So yesterday I actually sat with my sergeant that does this, and he showed me how to do it. He actually said, if you have any technologically savvy, you could do this. Honestly, he then said, that's not you, chief. But anyway, he did it in front of me. And it looked to me once you're trained, very manageable. They make sure there's a violation. They make sure the tag matches up to on both pictures. They make sure that the listing of the car matches up to the car they're looking at there. But I could see where errors would occur there, just somebody not realizing a certain make of car, like the GM Chevy question, which is a GM, which is a Chevy, somebody messing that up. It looks like it might be in some of the larger jurisdiction, a pretty low error rate.
So is there a way, I don't want to over-legislate or micromanage, but is there a way in this bill, if we're going to expand it, to ensure that that training is enhanced? Because it just seems like maybe that's not a large error rate, maybe that because it's millions and millions of citations, it's a de minimis amount, but I don't know how to put that number in context. But I'm just trying to make sure that if we expand the program, we also ensure we're hopefully bringing down the error rate or not increasing the error rate.
I would hope that would occur as well. I think by being trained by the what I absolutely don't want, maybe you guys don't care about this, I know, but I don't want the vendors doing this. I think this does belong as a law enforcement function, so I wouldn't want to see the bill go that way.
Right.
But I think they can provide the proper training, and the training may need to be a little more robust than to get this. And I can't tell you what every vendor does with training. I know what our vendor does, and our folks say it's pretty good.
So I'm not going to suggest any amendment, but you wouldn't be opposed if we happened to just clarify the language to make sure it's law enforcement that are training the expanded employees, because that's what you would prefer
No,
anyway?
our vendor trains our folks. I think that's important to have
You
the
think
vendor
that's
do
the
it,
better
the
course?
subject matter experts, yes.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Whoever wants to come up, but who trains, so you're talking about training. So they're training them on the use of this system. Are they training them in the theories and concepts of radar and LiDAR? Who's training them in that?
Senator, that I don't know if they're being trained. I know.
As a
in
police
my case,
officer.
my sergeant does. My sergeant that does
Correct.
this is in charge of that program.
He's in charge of traffic, and he's been trained in speed detection. And so I guess, and the standards of conduct for a police officer who would inappropriate, we were just talking about misuse of information and data. What is the recourse for a sworn officer who handles this inappropriate or misconduct versus that of a civilian?
For me, there is no difference between
There's no
that.
difference? They have the same standard?
I would have the same standards for that. Now, it would have to be something nefarious. If they just make an honest mistake, we're human. We hire from the human race. That's
Sure.
going to happen. But
I'm talking about if they,
intentionally doing something.
Correct.
It's their
correct.
ex-husbands, and
Yep.
so they're, okay, we would take that very seriously.
But it's also,
But-
look, I mean, it's also a document that they're signing, a sworn attestation.
Yeah.
And so it's, I mean, it's a misdemeanor, 10 years for perjury, and that's what perjury is. So if they falsify those documents, essentially, that's a 10-year misdemeanor.
Okay, thank you. And then that brings me to my next question. Testimony in court. If someone appeals the process, appeals the citation, an officer is trained for, I think, like some ridiculous amount of time, 2 or 3 weeks, just on radar, LiDAR, and how it works and the concepts therein. You have to be able to train it. You have to be able to explain it. And they're using these cameras, and they're being deployed by the contractor. So this is like a collaborative effort here, and I don't see anything in there that basically touches on the required, expertise for court testimony.
You can answer too, but it's also in the statute.
Thank you, Senator. I think, as you may know, the civilian that does this work on behalf of the Frederick Police Department does all of the testimony in court for both red light and speed cameras, according to our department. So
You guys currently do this?
the civilian who is doing the reviews in the city has the ability to testify on behalf of these citations in the city of Frederick.
But you just said currently you have a civilian doing red light and speed enforcement cameras?
Red light cameras, and my understanding from my department is that that individual is also able to testify on behalf of the speed cameras as well.
That's not in the statute right now. That's what we're discussing right now. How is that possible?
I'm only providing the information provided by my department.
So you're telling me, Mr. Mayor, that your agency of Frederick Police is violating statute
I'm not
right
saying,
now?
I'm not saying that.
Okay, you just did say it.
I'm telling you what I've been told by my department. We can certainly get clarification on that point.
Yeah, I think we need to, because that's a serious issue. Yep, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm good.
All right. Senator Sidnor has no questions. Mr. Chairman, anything additional? Okay.